This is how we do it.
This is how we do it.
La 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 la. La 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 la.
This is how we do it.
Hello and welcome to the very first segment of This Is How I Do It. I am John Keller, aka the IT Beast, and we will be going over the most popular virtual appliance that you can get for free, and that is VMware Player. Alright, what is VMware Player? Well, VMware Player basically plays existing virtual machines, or you can even create a new one if you so desire. VMware Player is a derivative of its big brother, VMware Workstation. Alright, for the host system requirements, they're listed right on top of there. I would tend to go towards more of the higher specs I have on the end. It'll do you for a good virtual quality experience. However, the minimums will do as long as you follow those minimums. And what's nice about this also is that VMware Player is no longer required to be registered with VMware. So now that we've looked over the requirements, let's go ahead to the download site. Okay, so now we're going to go on to VMware.com. We're going to open up our favorite browser, which in my case is Firefox. I will put in the web address, which is VMware.com. And we go to the nice flashy website. We are going to be choosing downloads from the drop menu. And once we get to the downloads drop menu, we're going to go towards this free product downloads. The bottom of this is Player. So we're going to click on Player. Alright, so we're now on the download page for Player. And there's actually only two downloads here, really. It shows three, but there's only really two different operating systems. One for Windows and one for Linux. At this time, VMware does not support really anything else other than those two operating systems. Now, if you see here, there are two variations of VMware Player and VMware Player Plus. Okay, the only difference is that Player is the free for personal use, which you can use at home, and you have the VMware Player Plus, which is the commercial player. And what that does is it suppresses the annoying "this is only for personal use" thing that you get if you use VMware Player. As far as features goes, the only feature that I could find it had, and it's only good for 30 days, is that it has a web-based interface that you can use, sort of like a preview if you wanted to use Workstation. Other than that, that's it. I would save the $10-20, whatever it would cost, and just get yourself the free personal use, because again, this is just for your betterment of what you want to do with the software. Alright, so now there's these two drop boxes here. You have major version and minor version. So let's say you want to use the previous version and not the newer version. So I'm going to go and say, okay, I want to use 5 instead of 6. So I'm going to use 5. There is the minor release, the latest one. And then I will just download the VMware Player for Windows 32-bit. However, in this case, we're going to go ahead and do the 6.0. Click on the nice big blue button, and you'll get save the file. Now remember, when you save the file, make sure you know where it's going so you can retrieve it later. So we're downloading at this time. Also, a nice thing now with VMware is you no longer have to register to download any of their free products. Whereas in the past, where I've used like VMware Server or even other versions of VMware Plus, you would still have to register for the product by getting their free account, which again is free, so it just takes a few more minutes to fill that out. But like most people, you don't want to have to screw around with that. So now we can just go to the website and download the player. So we are now going to go ahead and we are going to install it. This is actually very simple, very straightforward. Just click open, or you can double click on it, whatever is easier for you. It will start the installing process. Go ahead and hit next. I accept the agreement, because if you don't, guess what? It will not let you install it. And just choose the default. You can change it if you want to. Some people like changing it to other parts of the drive, so we can go and hit on the D drive if we want, but in this case, again, we're just going to go ahead with the default. You can check for product updates on startup. I would uncheck this because that's another service that's running in the background that will take your resources. If you want to check, I'm sure you'll check when you want. If not, you don't want a nag saying you got to check to see if we're up to date. Okay, help improve VMware Player. Okay, me personally, I uncheck this because I really don't, even though it's anonymous, I really don't like people knowing about what I'm doing. I'll ask you for shortcuts to set up. I don't like the quick launch, so I'm going to go ahead and uncheck that. But again, your choice. And then you click continue. So we're going to go ahead and continue this. Alright, so we have now completed. We're at the finish sign right here. So I'm going to click finish. Okay, so as you can see, since I'm using the free personal use, you got the non-commercial use only. Whoop-de-freaking-do. I'll save my $10, $20, and I'll put up with the sign. Um, Again, since this is the free player, you can create a virtual machine. You can open an existing virtual machine. In fact, originally Player was only created to play virtual machines that their other virtual appliances created, like VMware Workstation. Starting with version 3, they added the ability to create basic virtual machines, which is really nice. And of course, later on, if you want to upgrade to VMware Workstation, they have this nice little link here too. But we're not going to do that today. So now we're going to go through the different options that you have for Player. You can, again, file your new virtual. You can open an old virtual. You have the different player preferences. You can confirm it for closing a virtual machine. Uncheck this, and then if you hit the X on it, it automatically closes it, which is probably not the best idea in the world. And then you can also choose when closing a virtual machine, you can suspend the virtual machine, or you can power off the virtual machine. Power will probably be better. Check for product updates on startup. Again, leave that unchecked. That's just more resources being used. Okay, if the soft component is needed, it will automatically go and check. I'd leave that checked on. And we're going to leave the help VMware Player as is. So we're going to hit OK now. Alright, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go through the steps of creating a virtual machine just to show you the different options that you have. So you click Create a Physical Machine. You can do it three ways. You can use the installer disk, which is a physical format to where you can take a normal DVD, put it in there, and you can install it from that. Most people like using the installer disk image because that is physically on the hard drive. You just hit that, click Browse, click on to where you would have the ISO file. So let's say it was on the D drive. Let's throw that one out there. You can double click on that, hit open, bam, you got it loaded in there. Now most times what I do is I will install the operating system later. The reason why is that I like installing things as if it were a physical machine, and not have a lot of stuff pre-filled, like if it's Windows, the license key, or the account information of creating a new user for your new operating system. I like doing that when I'm actually installing the software. So I'm going to go ahead and hit next. Again, you can use any of these other options, they will work. Okay, so you see that there are different versions of operating systems. The big one, Windows, of course. So you can look here, and wow, there is lots of versions of Windows. Here, let me pull this up so you can see all of them. So it goes from all the way from Windows 8, okay, that's here the hierarchy, all the way down to, guess what, Windows 3.1. Boy, does anybody still remember Windows 3.1? Man, makes you feel old. But in this case, it has the different ones. See, it even has Server 2012. So if you want, you can download the beta and you can mess around with Server 2012. Probably wouldn't do it on this machine. On this machine, I would probably either go with Windows XP or lower because their demands are lower. We'll move on to the next popular operating system, which is Linux. Okay, and the most popular variant of Linux is Ubuntu. As you can see, you have Ubuntu regular, which is 32-bit, and then you have the 64-bit. Most people download the 64-bit nowadays. And you have Red Hat Linux, you have SUSE, there's other versions of Linux you can install. I mean, there's pretty much not a version of Linux out there you cannot put on on this virtual player. Say CentOS, which is the free version of Red Hat, Fedora, OpenSUSE, Oracle Linux. Once again, that's the it's kind of a double-edged sword. It can be free, you can download it for free, but if you want their support, you have to pay for it. Okay, on the next one. All right, the Novell NetWare. Okay, who the heck uses NetWare anymore? I don't know of anyone that uses NetWare. Solaris. All right, Solaris is a developer's traditional operating system of choice. However, trends are going more towards Linux. But people still use Solaris, so this is actually a good thing for you to download. And the Solaris operating system itself is free to download. So if you want to mess around with that, by all means. And then we have Other, which is for everything else. You can even do MS-DOS on here if you wanted to. Do not know what the heck Ecom Station is, and don't really want to know. But for right now, I'm just going to say Microsoft, Windows, and I'm going to just use XP just for laugh and giggles. Hit next. Alright, so now you got to name this virtual. So we are going to go ahead and just go Windows XP. I'm not even going to get fancy with it or anything. Browse. I would definitely not put it in the C drive. If I were for you, again, if you want to, that's quite up to you. Make a new folder. We'll call it Virtual Machines. Put all your different virtual machines in. Hit OK. And then what I always do when I create a virtual machine, I do a backslash here, the name of the virtual, and then I just copy it here to make another folder. So what's going to happen is you'll have the main folder virtual machine, and then Windows XP is a subfolder in it, and that's where the actual files for your virtual machine are going to go. Hit next. Alright. Windows XP doesn't really demand a lot. 40 gigs is probably more than adequate for it. I would not change that for Windows XP. Vista on up, I probably would put at least 100, especially with Windows 7 on up, because the install files for, or just a basic installation of Windows 7 is at least 16 to 20 gigs. And between updates and all that over time, your C drive would fill up really quick. So again, I would do that. Now the other option is you can either do one of two ways. You can have one virtual hard drive, which in my opinion is way better. It's easier to store, it's easier to move around, it performs better. But if you're going to create a big virtual machine to where you got to take it somewhere where you can only say use a DVD or a Blu-ray, then maybe you want to do the split option. But I would do that as a last resort. Doing the single option is always better. All right, we're going to hit next. All right, so right now this is what is basically set up. I'm going to run Windows XP. It's the location of the files. This is the version of the virtual hard drive, which is at 10. And that in workstation can actually be changed, but since we're not using workstation, you're stuck with 10. This is the operating system we have chosen for this. And then the hard disk is going to be 40 gigs. Now, note with this, it's not going to create a 40 gig hard drive that's going to take any space at once. What's going to happen is it will install the files and will only expand when needed. So your initial size may only be, after say all updates, are going to about 7 or 8 gigs. And that's it. Memory is 512, which I'm going to change. Network adapter is NAT, which is the internal network, and you also have your CD, USB controller, etc. set up. We're going to customize hardware first. All right, again, memory, Windows XP, you're going to want to at least use a gig, okay, for your best performance. So 1024 processors. Now, as you know, we're in the age of cores. This is being a dual core. We'll only have, well, you can use up to 16, but you can only really use here maybe about 3 or 4 in theory. I would just leave it at 1 because of it being just a simple dual core. Okay, DVD, again, you can put the physical disk in, or if you have an ISO image, you click on that, hit browse, and then you just go to wherever that may be at and click on the ISO and hit open. Sound card I would leave alone. One thing that's changed that I've noticed with 6 is that it no longer requires you to have the floppy drive. Before, I would always remove it because who the heck uses a floppy drive? Alright, so network adapter setting. At this time, leave it on NAT. Used to share the host IP's address. So whatever IP your computer is using, it will share that so you can get internet as you would if you were on the physical machine. If you are going to say have your own little virtual private network, so you have more than one machine, then you change it to host. So, but again, with player that's kind of hard to do, and on this machine, running more than 2 virtuals would be very resource intensive. Now, bridge is where you want to, if you're doing this at home and you want to use your internet on your virtuals, use the bridge, connect directly to the physical network. It will use the physical NIC card on your machine to obtain the other resources that your computer, meaning you can resource the external drives you may have, the network drives, network shares, if you have a home server, that, internet, so on and so forth. Bridge is the way to go. It's probably the easiest thing to use. Alright, and everything else, just leave as USB controller, sound card, printer, display, just leave that all as is. Display you can move around. I would just leave it on its defaults. No reason to mess with that. Hit close, and then you would hit finish. Alright, so now it shows I have another new machine to go, Windows XP. But this is as far as this tutorial is going. If you enjoyed this instructional video, thank you for your cooperation, attendance, and patience.